What's up, Twitch and YouTube? It's Murphy55 coming to you with another episode of The Northern. This is episode 16 of the series. We're bringing it back for the first time in about a year and a half. My guy King Cove is in the building. We are going to be talking all things NFL draft. I'm excited to get into it, man. We got a bunch of good topics to come up, and we'll also catch up a little bit and just talk football in general. But first and foremost, King Cove, thank you so much for coming on. You hold the record, the world record, Guinness World Record for the most appearances on the Northern of anybody. You have more than I do, I think.
Yeah, like when you first kind of popped the question or whatever, and I was thinking about it, like I said on Twitter, I was like, man, I'm like LeBron in the finals, just more appearance after appearance. So
Yes,
always
sir.
a pleasure, man. It's an interesting time for both of our teams in the NFL, so let's have some fun.
Absolutely, man. It's going to be a good time. I see some legends popping up in the chat. I appreciate you guys all coming through, man. !1 podcast if you want to see what the podcast is all about. So I will be reading the chat sporadically throughout, but I will also be giving a lot of my attention to Cove and just trying to put out a good video for YouTube as well. But the first thing, guys, that we want to get into, you can't talk about the draft without talking about the number one prospect, the blue chipper, Caleb Williams. So obviously, what are the odds that he gets taken first overall? Is there any chance that the Bears pull a fast one on us, Cove, and draft like some random Joe Alt offensive lineman?
If maybe like Justin Fields was still there, I mean, like, and that's just a whole situation too in Pittsburgh. You got Russ there, and now Field. It's just that's just such a weird situation itself. But I don't see any other way Caleb represents Chicago and those boys. He gets a lot of hate, I think, for the wrong reasons. Whether it was him being on USC and they weren't winning all the time. He seems to be the scapegoat of why they don't win. But he's absolutely going to be the number one pick. Absolutely going to Chicago. It'd be drastic if he doesn't go there. And so I mean, unless they were a little sus, because I know there was an issue with him not wanting to perform in the combine or something of that sort. He didn't want to participate, and I know a lot, certain people that kind of rubbed them the wrong way. So I don't know what his reasonings was for that. I'm kind of curious on your take on that.
I mean, it makes sense to me. Like, I think it's a more common thing now. Like, you'll see, some prospects will sit out of bowl games now. That's a thing because obviously, like, an injury would cost you your draft stock. If you're already projected to go super high, why risk it?
Right.
I understand the combine too, because a lot of time when you're already projected to go number one, you can't go any higher than number one. So the only thing that can happen is he has a horrific pro day, and then all of a sudden people start talking about JJ McCarthy, or they start talking about Jaden Daniels, gaining ground on him. So I think it was smart, for him to not throw, like, either to do a pro day on your own home turf in, very like scripted sense. Like, that's not a bad idea, but the combine, is just for Caleb, I don't think it made sense for him to compete in it. Like, we know he's freakishly athletic already. One thing that I heard, and this is the one thing that rubs a lot of fans the wrong way, is there was something that came out middle of the college season where he's saying, whatever team drafts him, he wants to get ownership stock in the franchise. He wants to have like a vested interest where he has some percentage of the franchise and profits are going directly to him. And I was like, that's not only is it completely like unprecedented, that's never happened before, but it's like, dude, a lot of you are like, what gives you the right? You could come into the league and you could suck. What makes him think that the Bears or any other team would give him ownership stock is absolutely insane. But
I don't know if he maybe thinks that if he does something like that, he's showing, I guess, some sort of loyalty, that if he ends up being, that if he does that, it's basically, I'm invested, so you better put some talent around me. And I don't think the Bears are like an awful team. Like, they're a very feisty team. So I don't know if it's going to be immediate success. I imagine he's starting week 1. There's gonna be a couple quarterbacks we talk about that it's gonna be we're not sure if they're starting week 1. Especially with the Giants situation, if the Giants go quarterback, we'll get there, but that's a whole situation. We don't know what the health is looking like with a QB1 right now. So like Niners said, their O-line isn't great. Bears O-line is not great. So he's gonna be running for his life. And so
for sure.
Any time a QB like that comes in hot to a league, and doesn't get protection, he's gonna make mistakes. Like, he will make mistakes, but the kid has a cannon. Like, he has a cannon. Like, he's so good at cross body. Like, he's good at attacking the sidelines. Like, the dude has crazy talent. I think wherever he does land, which is gonna be Chicago, which it is. I'm actually kind of surprised because for a little bit there in like October, I was like,
Yeah.
The Giants stock in him was looking really high.
Yeah.
There was Giants fans that didn't want him. There's always gonna be skeptical
Yeah.
fans.
Armchair
You,
GMs mostly.
they are the loudest people in the fan base. So
Yeah.
um yeah, I mean, you know what you're getting out of him. I mean, there's a lot of people that are very critical of him on like about his like personal life.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw the whole thing. He because he likes to wear nail paint and stuff like that. People
I
give
didn't
him
even
a
know that
hard
about him.
time.
Yeah.
Really, yeah, like
Interesting.
it was a whole thing on Twitter probably towards the end of the NFL season once, the real hype and towards
Yeah.
the end of the college season. He would go to games and NBA games and he would have finger paint on and he'd be dressing like just ways out of like people just take it some type of way and like
Yeah.
they would use that as you really want to draft a guy that
Yeah.
it
People did
has
that with
just a
Cam
unique
Newton too.
personal.
Cam Newton's fashion
Yeah,
sense.
it's
He gets
ridiculous.
way.
Yeah,
It's like who cares? He's a
right, absolutely,
multi-millionaire with swagger,
right,
and he has his own style, and he doesn't care what anybody thinks. And it's like people
absolutely,
will do a 3 hour podcast talking about Cam Newton's outfit at a press conference as if it matters at all.
absolutely,
Really doesn't. I mean,
right,
Kirk Cousins
exactly,
comes out wearing a Viking suit or dressed up in Cole's Cash gear.
right,
Like nobody talks about
yeah,
it, but like it's something
right.
with these young athletes where they're put under a microscope of it makes it like almost like they're immature because of the way they dress. I mean, look at the NBA. Like Grady Dick, who got drafted by the Raptors last year, comes in with like a
Hmm.
turtleneck suit that's all red sequins, and people love it. They love the
Yeah,
outlandish
absolutely.
personalities there. But the NFL is like kind of almost more like baseball, where personality is kind of looked at as a weakness because it's such a team game. Yeah, it
Absolutely.
is interesting that people give them so much flack for that.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think it's a pro for him because the guy like he's not going to shy away from anything. He's not going to shy away from how he feels about things. I just hope for his sake it doesn't get him in trouble. Like if
Yeah,
he has a bad game and if there's a coaching issue, I hope for his sake it's not he creates narratives that he's the problem in the locker room. That's
yeah,
gonna be the biggest thing with him. How is he going to behave in an NFL locker room? How is he going to get the guys around him to not only get his back, but to consistently through a long NFL season. And like back to the O line thing, is he also going to stay healthy? Is he going to
yeah,
is he getting sacked? Like Daniel Jones did last year. Next thing you know, guys on the bench the rest of the year. It
yeah,
happens. Guys get
for
Kirk
sure.
Cousins last year got beat up. The last couple years he's
Yeah, he
gotten beat
did.
up.
Yeah.
So and yeah, it's a huge part. Like offensive line is everything. So
Yeah, absolutely.
it
It's the pressure that's on Caleb too is going to be different. Like we might potentially have 5 quarterbacks taken in the first like 6, 7 picks in the draft. It could be a
yeah
super
yeah
quarterback heavy draft, but
absolutely
the stress and like the importance that's placed on those next 4 guys to go is not anywhere near what's going to be placed on Caleb Williams. He's expected to come in, be a starter day one, and be a generational talent. That's a lot different than any of these other quarterbacks in the draft could fizzle out, and people wouldn't be shocked. They wouldn't be super surprised by it. But if he struggles, and the thing is too, when you draft somebody first overall, they're expected to be up there on the podium talking to the media. Like they have more of an ownership, where people expect them to have a voice in the franchise,
Mhm.
because you got to mortgage your franchise's future to get one of these guys. A lot of the time, top quarterbacks, you got to trade 2 or 3 first rounders to get the chance to even draft them. So it's he's
right
definitely gonna be under the microscope, and I think you can't really protect him. Like I think about like the Patriots, like Mac Jones been a quarterback for. Yeah, I never see Mac Jones talking to the media. Like Belichick always protected his guys. Like he wants
hmm
to kind of shield them, and if he has a tough game, they're not going to go and do a media appearance or whatever. Like, or they're going to give a generic boilerplate answer. But I think with Caleb, he'll be
right
very vocal. I mean, one thing that I saw, and I didn't watch a lot of USC games last year, but and Jay Sully in the chat saying he wouldn't be surprised if Caleb flops. Interesting take.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
it's
based on the
possible.
team, based on the coaching, based on his health, based on just the pressure. I mean, it's like it's so weird. I mean, each NFL team gets 53 guys on the roster, but it's like the only of the major 3 sports. It's like when a guy gets drafted like that, number one, he can instantly become face of the franchise.
Yeah,
Like guys get drafted number one in the NBA, they don't become instant face of the franchise. At
yeah,
least some cases.
exactly.
There's guys like Cunningham that just the Pistons are just so bad. That
Yeah,
he just instantly becomes the face of the franchise. Same thing with baseball. There's
yeah,
how prospects work. Like you don't immediately become the face of the franchise. It's crazy on the
exactly.
NFL. There's 53 guys on a roster, but the second one guy goes number one, especially a quarterback, you're instantly face of the franchise.
Oh, for sure. That's why people are willing to run Bryce Young out of town after one bad year with no offensive line and no talent around him at all. You know, it's like, you know, give the guy a shot. It's not everyone can come in and be Stroud, you know. And Stroud had an easier path than Bryce Young last year because Stroud was the second quarterback taken. So that alone takes off a lot of the pressure. You know, and then having him struggle, that made it, you know, a lot easier, I'm sure, to just bask in all the achievements he was able to accomplish as a rookie.
And I think Stroud had just had just a better situation. I mean, the division he's in, it was the prime time. You know, Caleb stepping into a feisty division. I mean, you're gonna, you know, the Bears and Vikings are in a similar spot where, you know, like we talked about before, just find the identity. But I mean, the Packers were this close to beating the Niners. The Lions were this close to winning the NFC. So, like, you know, the North is going to be chaos, and the division games are not going to be any easier than they already are. So he's gonna have 4 games. I mean, I guess, you know, 6 games. Those 6 divisional games are going to be, I think, his biggest test. I don't know what the Bears' schedule is looking like or anything like that, but he's gonna have 6 games that are absolutely gonna be a true test for him. And the North will always be feisty, man. Always be feisty.
It is, man. It probably went from, I mean, last year, it's been years that I've been able to say, okay, well, the Vikings aren't the worst team in our division. This is the first year in a while where I've been like, you know what? There's a very good chance that we are going to be the bottom of the division. Packers, another potential really good long-term quarterback solution. They're third in a row that they've hit on, it looks like. You know, Lions looking really, really solid. Goff about to get an extension. Good, well-coached team over there. And then, the Bears potentially getting, you know, building. Like, they did win more games last year than the year beforehand. And, you know, they have a lot of weapons. They got Keenan Allen, too. They've got, weapons in place. I think they did take a lineman last year, too. They had 2 first-round picks, I'm pretty sure, last year. So I think they might at least have one quality lineman, you would hope. But,
what's crazy is they got Keenan for, like, nothing.
What was it, like a fourth rounder or something? It was something really low.
Something like that. Like,
I was shocked by it.
I mean,
that's the NFL. That's the salary cap, man. That's the salary cap right there.
There's just so many guys getting shifted around, which is like, you know, for minimal money, like, you know, like the whole Derrick Henry thing. I feel like the Ravens kind of stole him for they didn't spend that much on him, and then you got the Giants giving, you know, Singletary, you know, 3-year, 20-some mil, like, and then you got Stephon Diggs going to Houston for a 2nd-round pick, and it's just like, I'm just thinking to myself, I'm like, man, like, Giants, like, you couldn't give them a call and be like, you have something similar, you can't match that. I just don't.
Yeah, it's just crazy, man. It's like the NFL is like the only of the major sports where, you know, you'll see Pro Bowl players moved or Pro Bowl players cut just because of salary reasons, or, you know, a change of direction. And it's true, like, you know, you see a lot of these guys going for, you think that their value would be way more than it is, but age comes into play, how much you got to pay them, and how many holes you have on the rest of your roster that you need to fill comes into play too. And then the competitive window as well. You know, it's does the player's productive years align with when you think you'll be good enough to compete?
I think Party Rocker in the chat said it so well too. Like, Stroud just set a unique bar now. Like, if Caleb doesn't come out and try to, you know, even just match it, you know, try as hard to match that, I feel like that's going to be the standard for him, as if he isn't already going to be held to a his own unique standard, because he is a freakish athlete. Like, the dude is.
He looks like the real deal.
Like, he could like he has like the same body build as Josh Allen. Like, the dude can take a hit. Like, he can move. Like, he's got the cannon for it. Like, he's smart. Like, he's a smart QB. He's I think he's gonna adapt well. I think it's just gonna take him time. I think he needs to put himself around the right people. I mean, you got sometimes where guys get in the league and, you know, they just, you know, they get a bunch of money, or they, you know, get
the
around
Manziel
they're
factor.
In a city. Right, absolutely. Sure. I mean, and Manziel was just, and I used to be the biggest diehard Johnny Manziel fan, but those personalities, they show, and sometimes it's the first thing that shows. So I just hope he puts himself around the right people. Hopefully the right minds that kind of keep him not only humble, but just straight level, and just, you know, he needs to be understanding that, you know, this is a profession, and that he needs to, you know, not worry about all the outside noise, because there's going to be a ton of it, you know.
For sure. You know,
not only just in the city, but from, you know, every NFL fan.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, before we move on from Caleb, there's one last thing. Like, the only, you know, I remember when I was watching a lot of college ball at the beginning of the season last year, and then, you know, life got crazy, didn't have a chance to really lock in. Hannah stopped taking naps on me, so I couldn't watch like an hour and a half of college football while she was sleeping anymore. So
Right.
I was watching USC lost a game, and Caleb was on the sidelines crying with like his parents or his mom or whoever it was
Yeah.
there, and a lot of people took it the wrong way, and I was kind of like, it's interesting, like instead of being with his teammates that he goes straight to his family. It makes you think of that kind of, oh yeah, it's all about me kind of thing. But some people, you can frame something you see any different way. Like some people could look at it like he really cares, so that's a positive. Or some people can look at it like he really, he's sad because of his draft stock, because they weren't going to make the Natty anyways. They'd already lost a couple games that season.
Right.
It's
Hmm.
yeah, and other people, like you said, they think, if you have the best prospect come out in the last 5 years, how are you not in the national championship game? But I guess it's when you ever have a roster as big as a football team is, like, and college too, you got players that are playing for different reasons. Like players are trying to build their NFL stock as well.
Absolutely.
I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how he pans out. I do think
It will.
he'll be the best quarterback out of this draft class. But what I'm really interested to see, because I know, both of our teams don't have a shot at getting him. He's locked in. He's being handed to the
Hmm.
Bears essentially.
Right.
I want to get in and talk a little bit about the other guys that are going to come after him. If any of them can kind of get up to a
Right.
level where they might be game changers for a franchise. Um,
Absolutely.
so that's the what I want to move into next, boys. Rank the rest. So of the other quarterbacks in the draft, like what is your pecking order of who you think is the best? Who do you think would fit for possibly the Giants? Because both the Giants and the Vikings might be looking. I mean, you guys have a good shot. You could probably get a
Hmm.
quarterback for sure that might fall to you at your natural
Absolutely.
pick.
Yeah. It,
Which is one of the reasons why we keep talking about the Vikings having to trade up to get past a team like the Giants if we want to get one of these guys.
right. I think it's crazy too because each one of them are so unique. You know, you got JJ who obviously they won it all, and
Yeah,
obviously was just on the best team, the well-rounded team. You got Jaden who has two of the best wide receivers
yeah.
that are going into the draft. Who else you got here? You got
You
Drake
got
May, who
Drake May from North
I
Carolina.
think May is like I wanted May. Like if I had
Yeah,
to pick, I want May. I just
for
think
sure.
I have like he's so creative with his plays. Like what really sold me. I know you never want to just go full in based on just one player, one game,
Yeah,
but he had a play where he was like it was like a 4th and 1 or 3rd and 1. It was a short down distance, and he's like getting tackled, and he just tosses the ball over his shoulder
yeah,
to his running back. It's just I think he's from the little he's the one I watched the most of.
yeah,
Like I said, you're like me, and you catch what you can.
yeah, for sure.
College ball. 'Cause it's so unique. There's so many just conferences, and there's just so much going on. Um, but I really wanted Drake May. I think he's got I like the attitude he's got. So I would probably put him second,
Yeah,
and then Jaden behind him. It's just it's a tricky thing because like is it his is it the two the two dogs he's got around him with
yeah,
was it Rome Dunze? I don't know if I'm
yeah,
pronouncing
yeah.
that right.
He's got
Dunze,
Malik Neighbors too, right? The other guy
neighbors,
from
yeah,
there.
right,
Yeah,
right. So is it a mix of is it just he's got such talent around him, but from what I saw from him too, like the dude is accurate as hell. Like
yeah.
so
And he's probably the
you
most
got
mobile out of all those guys. He's probably the best scrambler, the most mobile out of any of those guys.
right.
Caleb's mobile too, but I think
And
Daniel's probably the most. Yeah,
right, and even a guy like Bo Nix too.
yeah,
He is kind of one that kind of sneaked his way up too. That there's I'm always heavy on Giants Twitter. There's people that want Bo Nix as well. If it
yeah,
comes down to waiting to take waiting to the second round, as well. But it seems like JJ McCarthy is where if the Giants do decide to go that way, I'm fine with that. I mean, dude's a winner. Dude is on a
yeah,
good team. Um, but if I had the choice, obviously Caleb's gonna be one just based
yeah.
on what we talked about, and then it goes May, probably Jaden and JJ for me are like on the
Neck and
same
neck.
mark.
Yeah,
But it seems like from what I'm hearing, Jaden's going to Washington because
yeah,
Washington's got the second pick. Seems like he's
yeah,
going number 2. But even then you forget about Penix too. I mean, like took Washington on a crazy run last year, and you got to think about him too.
yeah.
And he's left-handed, right? I think is he
I
the
think I
only
know
left-handed?
Penix is left-handed. I know Penix is a
I
lefty. I don't know if
I th-
anybody know in the chat or any of
I
these other
think
guys
I was gonna
lefties.
say I'm pretty sure he is the only left-hand of the few we're talking about.
Yeah, he is. There you
So
go. Niner says he is.
that's I was gonna say that is interesting. Even like a guy like from South Carolina, I've heard a little bit about, and I just remember his name looking through my little cheat sheet here.
Yeah.
Spencer Rattler too from
Yeah,
South
I
Carolina
had
too.
heard a lot about
Uh,
him like going
Yeah,
into the
I
season that he was going to be one of the guys
mhm,
too. It's funny how stock changes so much in one season. And it's like it's also
right.
wins and losses don't necessarily equate to like moving your stock up. It's more like I mean,
Right.
when I look at these guys, like May is a guy that's been linked heavily to the Vikings. I don't know if you know this, but the Vikings actually hired as our QB coach Josh McCown, the former like Lions backup. He was like a career backup, but he was like probably one of the best
Yeah.
backups in the league. Like he played
I was
a
gonna say
long
he
career.
played for all our teams. He played for all
Yeah.
our teams,
Kind of
honestly.
like a
Like,
Fitzmagic type, like just a guy who's never really
mhm.
established himself as a starter, but he's like, most of the time he's a top 30 QB in the league. He deserves to be in the NFL. So he
Right.
apparently
He's a
coached
game
May in high
manager.
school. Yeah, apparently he coached May in high school. So that they look at that
Interesting.
as is it a connection? Not that that's enough to you still got to trade up the assets to get him, right? Like he's not going to follow you just because he's not, there aren't really quarterbacks willing to pull an Eli Manning and be like, I refuse to play for this team. Like that's just not really done anymore.
Right.
So I like May too. I think May was asked to do the most on his with UNC. He didn't really have a great offensive line, didn't have a lot of great weapons. He was running for his
Right.
life most of the time. So like,
Hmm.
I saw a quote the other day about him saying that he'll lose you games. Like he'll be a little bit inaccurate on short passes sometimes. He'll make
Right.
boneheaded plays that end drives, but then he'll also be the guy who throws like a 70-yard Hail Mary to win it in crunch time. Like he'll have those crazy highlight plays that really stand out as
Yeah.
well.
Absolutely.
So a lot of people look at May as like, gamble on his ceiling. His ceiling is maybe
Absolutely.
as high as Caleb, if not, a little bit lower.
Right.
Jaden Daniels is a guy, he's a little bit older too, I think. I think he's like 23 or something.
Yeah. Hmm.
I'm a little bit ageist when it comes to prospects. I always look at a guy who's 21 and I'm like, man, he's moldable. You can work with him.
Absolutely.
He hasn't hit his physical prime yet. Whereas when I look at the guys
Right.
who are like, in their 23, 24, I'm like, maybe they're physically
Right.
mature. They're not going to have like another crazy growth or strength spurt. Um, Jaden Daniels is one guy I haven't really thought about with the Vikings. I'd heard that he was on
Right.
their radar. I'm sure they've done their due diligence, but I haven't really heard him linked to the Vikings at all. I did hear a
Uh huh.
story about him though. Apparently, he had a meeting with the Commanders over the weekend, and he was under the impression it was going to be a one-on-one meeting, but they were like all the other quarterbacks were there, and it rubbed him the wrong way, and it rubbed his agent the wrong way. Which I'm
Right.
like, if that is the case, maybe a little bit of ego there on his part, but also
Absolutely.
just starting off your relationship on that foot is probably not the best thing. It might give the Commanders the thought that we're picking second. We're gonna have our choice between him and May. Maybe we go with
Right.
May because things are just a little bit abrasive with Jaden. And JJ McCarthy is another guy. Like I think going into even the combine, I think he was like looked at kind of like a second round pick, late first round pick, and then his stock
Yep.
skyrocketed. Just
Yeah.
I think just out of need, how many terrible QB teams there are out there.
Right.
He really feels like the guy who was like the late riser in the draft. Although from what I've
Yep.
heard, he can't throw to the left side of the field. So like, if you can only throw to one side of the field, I mean that seems pretty important. But what do I
Well,
know?
it's something to think about. He's 21
Yeah,
years old, and he just won a championship with Jim Harbaugh.
yeah, yeah,
So you gotta
exactly.
imagine, that's an experience in itself. And just looking at all these guys are tall. Like
Yeah,
JJ 6'3", Jaden 6'4", Drake is six
yeah,
four. Like these guys are like big, like they're
yeah.
big.
The Josh Allen
So
prototype, yeah, for sure. I
they
mean,
are, man.
Jaden looks kind of thin. He looks a little bit thin from what I've seen. I've seen images.
Yes,
Have
he
you seen
does.
these Photoshop pictures of his elbow? Apparently, he has pointy
Yeah,
elbows. I saw this one
yeah,
Photoshop picture. Like, have you seen this? And it was like obviously clearly Photoshop, but like I had to go and look up what his actual elbows look like. I don't think it's actually an issue, but
right.
people. I mean, the pre-draft. Like, I go on Reddit a lot, and I'm constantly reading about, this year I've been like just obsessing over all the quarterback news. But dude, it's disgusting. I'm so
Right.
ready for the draft to come so we can stop talking about all this minute, rumors and stuff, which nobody actually knows
Yeah.
anything. Everything is a smokescreen. Every
Hmm.
organization probably has that. They have their big draft board. They know in their eyes who they're going to pick. It's not. It's going to be a snap decision.
Yep.
Once they see who goes, they know what their next move is. But
It's even
we just pretend to know. We just pretend to know, or we pretend to have
Absolutely.
sources.
Oh my God. I was gonna say I'm learning as I'm learning stuff as we talk right now.
Yeah.
Even another guy that I'm going over here too. I'm a Notre Dame fan. My family's all Notre Dame.
Yeah.
And they got him listed 10. Sam Hartman. Broke an ACC record with 110 touchdown passes.
Yeah.
Second to Philip Rivers. So I think
Wow.
guys like that, they got him projected at third to fourth round.
Yeah.
I wonder where guys like that fall. Do they fall somewhere where maybe they're on a bad team like the Raiders, and maybe
Yeah.
you got a situation where a team that you're not talking about and a guy you're not talking about is going somewhere, and he's also starting week one. So it's kind of
Yeah.
interesting to think about the second and third round pick guys.
Absolutely. And it's not unheard of too. I do see a lot of teams that draft we do see a lot of teams take two QBs in one draft as well. I've seen that before as well, like where you get like
Absolutely. Hmm.
one guy who you want to develop as a long-term backup or something like that. Like the Vikings took Jaron Hall 25-year-old rookie last year. And clearly he's not like I've seen him. He's horrible. He sucks. But like, the idea is that he's not projected to come in and start, but you can have him there for, his entire rookie contract, and he can learn the system inside and out and then be a solid fill-in. So, it's kind of like a way to hedge your bets too. I mean, they had it with Mac Jones and then Zap, like you see where teams have two young QBs, and it's always kind of an interesting controversy when one rookie comes in and fails and they try out the other guy. But there will be. I think the one thing that stands out to me, this seems to be a really deep QB class. I don't know if it's just because teams need QBs, but I think next year, because some people are like, a lot of these teams could wait a year. Like the Patriots, they could draft Marvin Harrison and wait till next year to get the top QB. But there's a good chance that next year's number one overall QB might be not as good as any of these five guys. So, it'll be interesting to see. Too. Exactly.
I mean, you got Daniel Jones, Drew Lock, and Tommy DeVito. Like,
yeah. Oh man, Tommy Cutlets. That was a fun storyline, though, man. That was a fun storyline. Yeah, I mean, Dobbs season, the Pastronaut. Dobbs was fun for about 3 weeks before it became really not fun. These little things, they give you hope and something to root for. That's the beauty of sports. Even when you have a losing season, there can still be little things that you enjoy.
Absolutely. I was gonna say, when you're a New York sports fan, Minnesota fan, like no matter what you're, what team you're a fan of, we all have branches of teams in the cities we like, and that it's not always pretty. It's rarely pretty. Dude, not everyone gets the Kansas City Chiefs dream.
Oh God, no! I wish, man. It's I mean, I guess that's what Bears fans are hoping for. They're like, can we get our Mahomes? And that's obviously that's what every team is looking for. But many teams are not in a position to ever get a player of that caliber. There's only a few generational quarterbacks that come around. One guy that we haven't talked about yet, Michael Penix from Washington. He's somebody too that if he's like for the Viking situation, like let's say we can't trade up, or the package that's asked of any of those teams is like astronomical, and we don't want to give up 3 first-round picks. There's a good chance that Penix is available a little bit later on. Like some people have said, oh, he could go top 10, like he could go top 10 because there's all these teams that need him. But I was like, if the Vikings end up having to go like defensive lineman at pick number 11 because we can't trade up for a package that we think is fair, I'd be okay with that. And then if Penix is there at 26, I'd be like, you know what, he's 24 years old. He's played for a few, like the transfer portal is kind of wild. It's wild to me that a lot of these QBs have played for multiple Division I teams too. Like that seems like a whole foreign idea to me too. The transfer portal has kind of changed college football because guys can like tailor make like what is a good fit for me in my goal of becoming a professional. But Penix looks like freakishly athletic. Like his 40 time was insane. He's got an absolute cannon. He made it to the national championship game. He's got some of the best tape of anybody out there, but he also has I think he has like 2 different ACL tears. I think he had like a serious shoulder surgery on his throwing arm. So like that injury history scares me too. But like there's a really good shot too that he could be one of the better quarterbacks out of this draft too.
Anytime you invest, especially a top 10 pick into a quarterback, you're always going to take that risk, no matter how the potential that they have or don't. The injuries are always just you kind of hold your breath, and just obviously these GMs are doing their research, and they're talking to these guys and watching them and the combine and stuff like that. And it's gonna be a real blast to see on Thursday. What team really takes a risk on who.
Yeah.
It could be crazy. You can see a guy like I said, like JJ end up going second, or a guy like Penix end up going second round. And that ends up being a genius call, because maybe a team, hopefully like the Giants, maybe trade up and get Harrison Jr. and then still get a quarterback, or try to add to the QB room and maybe put some more pressure on Daniel Jones, because that's gonna be the biggest question for us.
For sure. All it would take is like one of those top 5 teams going and drafting like an edge guy or something, and it would throw everybody's predictions off,
Exactly.
And then trades start to happen, guys trade back, and it's I demand a mock draft right now, Sully. We'll do all 7 rounds. We probably, between us, we probably know maybe 20 college football players, so we could probably fill out the first round maybe.
Dude, that's being generous. You're giving me 20, dude.
Yeah, you know how many fake mock drafts I looked at? I looked at one mock draft that had the Vikings taking 2 QBs in the first round. I was like, dude, what the? And they're like, this is the ultimate hedging of your bets. I was like, are you serious right now? Like, they're like, yeah, taking Drake May at pick, like trading up, getting Drake May, and then taking Penix at number 26. I was like, dude, are you serious right now? There's no way. Yeah. Sully could do all 7 rounds. I believe that. He's locked in though, and he also is a Michigan fan, so he's got a reason to pay attention to college football. His team's the best in the nation. But it'll be interesting to see where these guys rank. I'm hoping the Vikings get a QB because obviously that's the most important position in football. But at the same time, you know, there's something to be said for maybe, you know, taking best player available and letting the picks fall to you and then trying again next year and seeing what happens. But
Absolutely.
the next thing, and this is what Cole brought up to me, we were just in a Discord call right before the podcast started. And he said he'd seen some rumors online about, you know, Justin Herbert potentially being available. Teams like the Vikings. I mean, if you guys have paid attention to the offseason at all, you know that, you know, the Chargers have essentially depleted their entire roster of talent. There's really
It's
nobody
absolutely
left.
insane.
Like Eckler's gone, Keenan Allen's gone. I mean, you have a young top 10 quarterback, but you know, potential to be a top 5 guy for sure.
Absolutely.
You know, and he just took away all of his weapons. It's kind of like what we see going on in Buffalo with you know, Gabe
Josh Allen.
Davis and Stephon Diggs leaving as well. Like it's, you know, you see a lot of these young quarterbacks now where maybe teams feel like their competitive window is closed or they don't have enough talent to build around this guy and they got to go another direction. So like what kind of a trade package do you think it would take to get Justin Herbert? Like let's say you don't want to gamble on any of these 4 or 5 top quarterbacks. What kind of a package do you think it would take to get Justin Herbert? And is he even available?
I feel like it's so weird too because you know we talk about Keenan Allen getting traded for minimum and Diggs getting traded for minimum. You know what? You know, since those guys are minimum, obviously the quarterback position is the most important position in the league. You know, how much more value does that automatically add? And I was the biggest Justin Herbert fan. I think it was Oregon, coming from out of Oregon. He reminds me just the way he like his throwing motion, just like his accuracy reminds me of Rodgers, you know, just to some degree. Like I absolutely love Herbert. I think, you know, he's had talented, you know, on that roster, but I feel like the Chargers have just completely just failed him. Like the Chargers are such a weird organization. I think, you know, they go last year, the year before, you go up 27-0 in a wild card game, and
to the Jags, that was crazy.
I was gonna say he gives you 27 points in the first half, and you can't stop. You know, so I think they just suppressed him, and I think it's inevitable that he ends up getting moved. It's got to take at least a first round pick at least. I mean, I don't know. When it comes to something like that, is like, are you giving up a quarterback for quarterback type of situation? Could we see, you know, a first round pick and a team's quarterback getting swapped? But he needs to go. It's like, where would be the best spot for him? Like, where does he go? And he's in a better situation than he is with the Chargers. Because, like, I mean, you think about outside of who's drafting quarterbacks, obviously you got, you know, the Bears, you got Washington, you got New England.
Probably the Patriots.
Maybe, or probably the Patriots. Right. You got a few teams that are, like, so where does that leave maybe a team like the Raiders? Is he in a better spot there, you know, compared to being in LA?
And then still in the same division then too, right? Like, would they be willing to trade him within the division? I lean towards no. It's very rare that you see like a top tier player at the height of their career move around in the division. Normally you see guys at the end of their career, once they've been cut, like Aaron Jones going from the Packers to the Vikings. You see it a lot towards the end of guys' careers. You know, Brett Favre, obviously he took a 1 year, you know, stopover in New York with the Jets, and then he went back to the Vikings. Like, you see it a lot, but you don't really see guys in the prime of their career, or guys who maybe even, like, I think Herbert probably hasn't even had his best season yet. I think he probably, I don't think he's on a, he's like, what, probably 25 or 26 at this point. Like, he's still going to have a lot of really good Pro Bowl years ahead of him.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and Sully says Herbert is never getting traded. He's the reason Harbaugh went to LA. So there you go. You get Harbaugh, a QB whisperer.
That is right.
That's a good point.
And it's just no, absolutely. But same thing with just like the other guys we talked about too. I mean, Herbert also missed a lot of time this year. So you gotta hope that, I don't know. I don't remember if it was his thumb or if it was a hand injury. Or I can't remember exactly what it was. But you gotta hope. Did they think maybe he, you know, isn't fully healthy and that there's a chance he could be moved, and that's why you do get rid of all these guys? I'm not really sure where the direction is. You seem like you're pretty much just, you know, telling your star quarterback like, hey, we're tanking. You know, you're in a division where the Chiefs are gonna run it till they can't run no more.
Yeah,
you know, so
absolutely. Yeah, it's a tough division. Like, being with Pat Mahomes, it's like, you know, best case scenario, you're sneaking in a wild card spot, and then you got to eventually get past the Chiefs anyways. And we know that Chiefs aren't even a team that really plays for the regular season anymore. They're a team that, you know, as long as they can secure a spot, they're going to turn it on. They have an extra gear come playoff time, and they're really, really well coached too. So it's a tough thing. I mean, you look at the Bills. I think the Bills kind of breaking things down a bit this year was a direct, because they can't get past Mahomes, and at this point they realize, you know what, we might never be good enough because his window is still wide open for the foreseeable future. Even if Kelsey retires in a season or two, and, you know, they've been able to do it without top tier wide receivers. Like it doesn't matter
Absolutely.
if you have, and again, it brings me back to Caleb Williams. If he can have any kind of impact like Mahomes, the NFC North is going to be an absolutely horrible division to be in for the next 10 years, which is a
Yep.
scary thought because it's hard to watch a
Absolutely.
team when your team is perennial bottom dwellers. It's not a fun thing. I've been through
It's
it
just
after.
crazy.
Yeah, the Vikings had a QB carousel for like, about 10 years there during Adrian Peterson's entire tenure. He never had a good quarterback,
Right.
and it's
Right.
tough. Yeah, but
Yeah, it's just, and then you throw the Broncos in there too. Like the Broncos are in this weird spot where like they kind of like just got Russ, and then completely that was just a completely failed experiment. Like, maybe you could see them also just kind of go back a little bit. Pick up one of those second or third round guys, or maybe even make a trade of some sort of themselves. So
absolutely.
could we see him move in honestly, him moving in the division makes the most like immediate sense, I guess. Like, you put him, you send him to, to the other LA squad, and he's got
Yeah,
Devontae Adams waiting for him, and
for sure.
so, I mean, the Raiders, it's crazy on Christmas. Like the Raiders shut down the Chiefs, and it looked like the Chiefs were, doomed to be bounced first round. Then next thing you know,
Yeah.
they they win it all. It's actually insane.
It is nuts, man. Any team can win on any given Sunday. Like that's the beauty of it too. You'll see some like crazy like what just happened moments, and it looks like
Hmm.
teams imploding, and then they come back in time and they figure things out in time for the playoffs. It is interesting, man. But the next thing I want to get on to, and we won't spend too much time on some of these topics because, like we said, we're not experts on the entire draft class, but want to talk about some of the wide receivers and running backs coming into the draft. And the one thing that we talked about before the podcast started was the fact that, this past year was kind of interesting because I was of the opinion that we weren't going to see running backs drafted in the first round anymore. You see as free agents, they don't get signed to good contracts. A lot of them get franchise tagged over and over again until their tenure's over. Guys like
Yep.
Saquon, who's like a franchise running back, teams are willing to let him go. He went and signed with the Eagles. So like it
Crazy.
seemed like the era of the running back was over. And then last year we had Bijan taken with a really high pick to the Falcons, and then we had
Yep.
Jameer Gibbs become like a really kind of interesting weapon for the
Right.
Lions. So we're starting to see the resurgence. But then this year, I'm like, we talked about this. I was like, I don't know any of the running backs in college this year. I haven't heard of
Yeah.
any of these guys. Who's the number one dude as far as running backs go? And from doing some research, it looks like the guy from Texas, Jonathan Brooks, is one of them. He's a senior from
Hmm.
Texas, but also I think he tore his ACL last year. So it's like potentially the best running
Yeah.
back in this class is injured going into the draft. So how does that affect his stock? Do you think we'll see a running back drafted in the first round this year?
I'd be shocked. I mean, I don't know what team, what team immediately needs, what team has their quarterback, has their receivers, or like what team is really missing that running back, or just,
Yeah,
I think we'll be surprised. Like Nair said, Cowboys. I mean, Cowboys could definitely use a
yeah,
running back if that's probably your team. Because they probably, I mean, the Cowboys are like super talented still,
yeah,
regardless of how their inevitable failure after
yeah.
December. They're
Every
still
year.
such a talented, like they could put up
Yeah,
30, 40 points a game. They
yeah,
show it almost every year. So you could see a team like that maybe sneak and snag a guy, and that's I think it puts a little bit of a chip on these guys' shoulders that you're not going to immediately be, you know these guys' names aren't getting called, in the first, couple hours of the draft.
yeah,
When you had a guy like a few years ago, you have a guy like Saquon just go number 3 or number
yeah,
2. And same thing like you were talking about with Bijan, and it paid off. I mean,
yeah.
Bijan
He
and
looks great.
Jameer Gibbs are just absolute studs, man. They're so much fun to
Yeah,
watch, and especially with a team like Detroit who like to do the double running back,
yeah,
so it also opens the possibility of maybe a team wanting to do the same thing as Detroit's doing, because
yeah,
the David Montgomery Gibbs combo is just absolutely
yeah,
nuts. You never know what they were gonna do, because they would have formations where both of them are out there,
yeah.
and you think David's getting it and Gibbs is going out for a route, and they would completely throw it around. So
Exactly.
they're there's definitely a couple options. I definitely, like Nair said, could definitely see the Cowboys going that way. Like I said, after Brooks, I'm not sure too many names, but
Yeah,
what's beauty of a position that's not talked about much as like a top pick in the draft, someone will surprise us.
yeah,
And
for
that's what's
sure.
going to be really fun about that.
Yeah, if you think he's the missing piece, and you want to, let's say you're sitting at the bottom of the first round, and you're pretty much set at your other skill positions. I could see a team like reaching up
Hmm.
to grab him, but it really breaks down on your type of offense you run. Because I've seen last year the Vikings, we got rid of Delvin Cook, and I know the Ravens picked him up,
Hmm.
and Delvin had some fumble issues, but honestly, he was a perennial 1,000-yard back. always in the conversation for top 5 backs in the league, and then
Hmm.
you just see how these guys are treated as disposable. Like it's like as soon as your production dips even slightly, you're out of there. Like look at what's his name, Ezekiel Elliott, same thing. Like he was kind of brought in a couple of great years in the NFL, and then just once you're done with them, you just kind of discard them on the side, and they have trouble like catching on with another team. Even the Packers letting Aaron Jones go. Like you see a lot of these guys like they really
Yeah,
struggle, and
crazy.
and it's I'm just thinking as a parent, if I had a kid who was looking to play football, like I would never want them to be a running back because it's probably one of the most
Right.
valuable positions on the field. In that, if you have a good running game, you can do so much as a football team and keep teams honest. But at the same time,
Right.
these guys don't get paid. They take more hits than any other offensive
Yep.
position, and their careers are probably shorter than any other position too. So it's like you got to be kind of insane now to go in and
Yeah.
become a running back in this
Running
league.
back, right?
It's
It's
brutal.
and then as someone that grew up watching Frank Gore play 16 seasons, it's just
Yeah,
like it's just insane, and you just I don't maybe it'll change over time, but yeah,
yeah,
you're right. In this league now, it's not you know there's actually a true window for these guys where they kind of I
yeah.
feel like they physically have to get capped out
Oh, for
to
sure.
avoid CTE and real
Yeah.
taking real damage on their bodies. I mean, even a guy like Derrick Henry who's like huge. I mean, he's getting there. He's been in the league for a little while now, but he's got to be
Yeah.
the guy. I mean, he just takes on the hits and just absorb them. I mean, you got to even think even like a guy like that over time is
Yeah.
we're starting to see, maybe not so much a decline, but on the second half of his just
Yeah.
NFL tenure.
Yeah, and I think I have a feeling that Henry's still going to be a beast there. He'll have a lot of pressure taken
Oh
off
my
him.
God,
He's
he's
not
a
going to be the
perfect
sole
spot.
offense. He's going to be it's great for him. I totally
Hmm.
understand the fit. I think it's a
It's
great one.
perfect.
He's going to look great in a Ravens uniform. It's going to be tough for the AFC North to compete against that team.
Yeah,
But
I
that's a really
mean,
tough division too. Like it's
yeah,
I mean,
I mean the read options, like what that team's gonna be, the creativity that they're gonna be able to do. Even a guy like they even utilize Justice Hill,
yeah.
and they got Gus the Bus if
Yeah. Mark
they
Andrews
got
coming
they
back
got
off
they,
of
I
his
was,
surgery. He'll be
yeah
back for next year
they
healthy. Yeah.
and then you got arguably, in my opinion, probably outside of Mahomes, the most talented quarterback in
Yeah.
Lamar. I'm a big Lamar fan.
Me
This
too.
dude
Yeah.
just is just so unique. Play style is just so unique that you just um you know today's Vic and some, and
Yeah.
it's just awesome to see. I wouldn't be surprised if they are exactly where they were last year, host an AFC Championship game.
Yeah, I could see it. I
So
could see it. I
ooh,
think
Gus
he
on the
will
char
win a
actually didn't see it.
championship
See,
at some point.
I'm learning stuff, Murph.
Yeah,
Listen,
see,
Gus is on the Chargers.
outside of my own
I see.
division, I haven't paid too much attention to what's going on. It's too much.
Yep.
It's an over, and plus, we're both
It's a
fans of.
learning experience.
You're locked in on the Knicks right now. We got
Oh
baseball
my
season
god,
starting up.
am I
It's a lot of
ever?
other sports
Am
to
I
watch.
ever?
Yeah. But the next thing that I wanted to talk about here, so we talked a little bit about. Oh, well, we can talk wide receivers too. I mean,
Yeah.
I've been hearing rumors of like maybe one of the LSU guys, like a Dunzy go or not. Well, a Dunzy's from Washington, but like maybe one of. It sounded like Marvin Harrison Jr. is the consensus like number one receiver. Like, and I'm looking at a lot of these guys on the list, like Malik Neighbors from LSU, Roma Dunzy from Washington. These are all teams that have quarterbacks that are like in the top 5 in college football. And then I look at like Marvin Harrison. I have no idea who Ohio State's quarterback is. He's not projected to go in the draft that I know of. It makes you wonder like is he? I know he's a blue chip, prospect, and I know he's a lot. I think he's a lot bigger and taller than his dad and stronger than his dad was as well. But
Uh
like,
huh.
how much do you think like name recognition has benefited him too? Because we know Marvin Harrison with Peyton Manning was one of the
Absolutely.
greatest wide receiver QB tandems of all time.
Absolutely.
Um, so do you think that his pro pedigree in his family has like benefited his draft stock to some degree?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You always see it with father son, especially like one of the biggest up and coming type of situation is, LeBron, Bronny
Yeah.
coming up. Like
Oh yeah,
it's
Bronny
just
might not even be a
the
prospect if it wasn't for the name.
right,
Yeah,
yeah, it's crazy. Right, it's insane. So like, yeah, of course, absolutely, the name absolutely fits, but the highlights, like he is just clearly the best receiver in the draft. There's a reason for it. He's just so fast. Like the kid is
yeah,
so fast. Like he reminds me of Reek.
yeah,
With if he can be as good of a route runner as Reek, and
yeah.
especially like his father.
And taller
Like
and
he's
significantly taller than Reek
it's
too. Yeah,
right, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, you mix the like you said, the family pedigree. Absolutely, it's gonna be part of the name. He's got the nickname. I've heard a couple other nicknames on Twitter for him. So like
yeah,
he's got a fun aura about him, and yeah, I would love if the Giants decide if you're kind of stuck with DJ in the contract,
Yeah.
and if he's healthy to go by training camp, and you want to make that because he's inevitably probably going to Arizona at 4 is what I can
Yeah,
imagine.
I could see it. Like it's funny, like Kyler Murray's had a pretty long leash. Like I mean, I don't know if he's on his last year of his rookie deal at this point, or I don't even know if they picked up his 5th year option at this point. Like he's a guy who has so much potential, and I haven't heard any. He hasn't been healthy. His attitude has been questionable. Like his ability to grow and like prove him. Like it's Arizona's pretty much a bottom dwelling team, and I imagine they'll be terrible again next year. It's a weird situation. Like, do you go QB at this point and like you have a high pick, you could potentially get a franchise guy there if you've completely given up on Kyler, or do you try to give him an elite weapon and then go from there? Because I mean they've tried that, they got Hopkins, like they've tried to give weapons and it never really worked out for them before in the past. Like, do you think that that's the best chance for him to go? I mean, I've heard people even saying
Yeah.
the Patriots might even forgo drafting a QB because the thinking that I've heard is that the Patriots roster is so devoid of talent. They're like really a weak roster right now, that even if they do get a top quarterback, they're probably still going to be at the bottom. So the idea is, they could still be the worst team in the league. Do you just go QB next year?
And you don't have the only thing that even gave any sort of strength over there is having Bill there, and Bill's not there anymore.
Exactly.
Bill
it's going to be a new
retiring.
look. Like that's a huge change.
Yeah, it is, you thought it's a new era with Tom leaving. You're basically starting from, scratch with them. Which I guess, I think it's exciting for him, maybe just if they eventually get to any sort of length that they used to be, it'll be a, start from the bottom, get to where, obviously they want to be like every other team.
For sure, it'll be interesting. It's gonna take a while, and like I just associate Belichick because that's my entire like high school onwards. Like he was just an icon over there, and I feel like a lot of these coaches, their tenure like this, he's one of the most decorated coaches in NFL history, but doesn't seem like when an organization's ready to part ways, like they're done. You're out of there. Like it was very clear that they weren't going to bring him back, and I don't think it was completely his choice. I think where did he land? Did he accept a college? I think he accepted something at Washington maybe, or I can't remember where. Yeah, is he the head coach of Washington next year? I mean, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
And honestly, I mean, you've seen for Harbaugh too. Like Harbaugh, I thought was another coach. Like when he was with the Niners. Oh, he's not with Washington. Tell me, anybody know where Belichick has he not accepted anything yet? He might just be doing what.
I heard Atlanta too.
His son is Washington's DC. Gotcha.
I had heard Atlanta rumored as well. I heard something about Atlanta wanting to. I mean, that's. I can't see him going anywhere that it either doesn't have already home roots for him. Like there's Giants fans that want to pick him up because he's won a Super Bowl with the Giants already.
Yeah, with Parcells, like back in the day. Yeah.
Right. So I don't see him just going somewhere random.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I also wonder too, like, I mean, obviously I think he's probably going to chase the all-time wins record. I mean, it's in his grasp, but at the same time, with how bad this Patriots team is, like, do you really want to have to play another 5 years of having terrible records to get there? Do you want to limp past that record, or would you rather do it on your own terms and have, a good solid couple seasons, with an organization that values you? It's interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but one thing, I think there's a lot of teams that are in need of, like, obviously the Vikings, I think we're pretty set at wide receiver. Obviously, if we can't lock up Jay Jettis long term, that might become a position that we have to address. But Jordan Addison panned out really well for us, and I was kind of like, I was okay with the pick last year, but I would have preferred a cornerback. But now seeing him perform for an entire year, Addison was like, 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns as a rookie, looks like the real deal. He's got swagger. And my guy Ski in the building. Have you all talked about the New York Jets yet? You know what? We haven't addressed the Jets in detail yet.
I think the Jets are looking like the best like situation in that division. I mean, like honestly.
Yeah.
If Rodgers comes back, they've upgraded the team too. I can't remember. I would have to like see it again, but like the Jets are actually like on paper probably the better team like in the division. I mean, you got the Dolphins, but I think the Tua is such a weird situation. Like the first 8 weeks we thought Tua was the MVP, and
Yeah, dude, it's insane. And I'd like to get my guy Dill, who's a big Dolphins fan. Like he's still big on Tua, and it just shows like the pressure of the QB position. It changes week to week. You look at the value of like sports cards, QBs. QB has one good week. Like Josh Dobbs comes in, has one good week. His rookie card like quintuples in value. It's like people are so knee-jerk reaction to QBs. They don't really look at the entire big picture. You know, I've had people talking about Kirk Cousins being a below average because he's only won one playoff game or whatever. But I'm like, dude, you know, there's more to it than just wins and losses with QBs. You got to look into the
Absolutely.
situation and the talent they have around them. But yeah, the Jets are in an interesting position there. Like,
They are.
I think A-Rod still has game if he can stay healthy, if that Achilles can be healthy. He had apparently like some experimental surgery to recover quicker, which is like always it's kind of exciting, but it's also kind of scary. It's like, you know, because we don't know about the durability of the new procedure that he had done. But you know, I kind of have a vested interest in the Jets because obviously the Vikings starting QB next year is going to be Sam Darnold, who was terrible on the Jets, but at the same time he had
Yeah.
no talent with him. He had like a bunch of nobodies at wide
Right.
receiver, no offensive line help. So you know, there's that
You
interesting
you
situation
never
as
know
well.
if also he just says, you know, I'm done with football. I'm gonna just do podcasting now.
Yeah,
You know.
exactly. Rogers is one of those guys. He has nothing left to prove. He's a champion. He's one of the most accurate and decorated quarterbacks of his generation. Obviously, he's not on Tom Brady's level, but I think he's one of the best QBs of the last, you know, 10, 15
Definitely
years.
talent. I mean, talented wise, definitely. I mean, like I said, obviously outside of Brady, but I mean, I think
Yeah.
even with all things considered, Rogers is at least just as talented.
Oh
You
yeah,
know,
absolutely. I'd put him up there like with
definitely just as accurate. Like
for
it's
sure.
insane. Like
I put him up there like even like in the Drew Brees category. Like I'd put him up
mhm,
even. I personally prefer Rogers to Brees, but
I
you know
agree.
Brees obviously has crazy volume stats. Like the passing yardage is nuts. Um, but I mean we'll see. I think if you put even Sam Darnold today on this team on the Jets, they'd probably be a solid team that would be a playoff caliber team. But it is.
Hmm.
Aside from the Patriots, that division is pretty deep. Like, I mean, the
Hmm.
Bills, though, who knows? Like, the Bills, I still, because of Josh Allen. I expect them to be good, but the supporting cast makes me think that it's probably the Dolphins or the Jets division to win next
Yep,
year.
I
So
agree.
we'll see. They're in a good best spot they've been in a few years for sure.
I would
Um,
do anything, like literally anything, for the Giants to make a package for Josh Allen. Like, not even joking, literally anything.
oh, absolutely, dude. Can you imagine? But I bet you the Bills front office is not even on their radar. LeBrun coming through with the big time raid during the podcast. LeBrun, thank you so
Oh,
much for sending the Raiders in here. Appreciate you boys coming through. We're just doing a podcast with my guy King Cove. The Northern is making its first return in over a year. We're talking some NFL drafts, so appreciate you boys coming through, and thank you for dropping the shout out, Cove, and thank you for the gifty as well to my guy
of course, man.
Ski, who just dropped the follow. I appreciate that. Um, so we want to get into next. We're not going to talk too much about you know, we're not going to talk too much about offensive and defensive linemen, but you know, I think
Hmm.
Joe Alt is considered to be the top tackle in the draft, and normally we see tackles drafted in the top 10 every year. So, what team could you think of that doesn't need a quarterback that might potentially, you know, use that first round pick to draft an offensive lineman this year?
I
Because
mean,
it's not a sexy pick. It really
it
isn't.
would be
Because
it would be such a, like, I guess, LOL moment if the Giants were to do something like that, because there's been so many years where I'm like so excited for the draft, and then like the Giants just draft an offensive lineman. You know, the
yeah,
Giants did bulk their offensive line a decent amount. So when you look, so you gotta think, you got Chicago 1, Commanders 2, Pats 3, Cardinals 4, Chargers 5. I mean, top 5, there's no
yeah,
chance, right?
yeah.
You know, then you got teams like 7, 8, and 9, like Tennessee, Atlanta. And then you got Chicago again. You know,
That
what
would
it,
be an ideal
you know what I
situation
mean? Like,
right there.
right?
Drafting the
And
best QB in the draft and then getting a lineman to protect him. That sounds like a no brainer right there. To be honest.
right, and like Chad said, and the Jets are 10. Like the Jets already have, you know, bullied the offensive line with Moses and Tyron Smith. I mean,
Yeah.
like, so you maybe I mean, what do you do if you're the Titans? What do you do? Do you see maybe the Titans? You know, do they rock with Levis? Is that what they want to do? Do they? I could see them going offensive line. I can see
Yeah.
them. I can see them in Atlanta both go offensive line. You guys are what, 11th, right?
Yeah, we're 11th. So honestly, if we do go
Would
QB, it's probably going to mean
would it
moving out of
would it
that
be
spot.
a total LOL moment if y'all took Joe Alt?
I,
Like,
I
is there
I would
any?
be shocked because we already have our our interior lineman is what we need. Like our tackles are good. You know, we got Brian O'Neill at right tackle who's probably top 10 at the position, and then we have Christian Darrisaw who's probably top 5 at the position. So our tackles are good. For us, it's like the left guard, right guard. I mean, we haven't
Yeah.
re-signed Reisner. Every year, Reisner seems to like the Broncos let him go. He didn't sign until like week 4 or 5. And then again this
Mm-hmm.
year, everyone keeps telling him, "Oh, we love what you're doing for the team," but then they're just waiting on him because apparently, if the Vikings re-signed him, we'd have to give up a compensation
Mm-hmm.
pick. So I think he's
Yep.
gonna, you know, we might re-sign him, bring him back next year, but we definitely could
Yeah.
always use help up the middle.
I
I
mean,
mean, Ed Ingram was one of the worst right guards in the league until he finally figured it out halfway through the season. So,
yeah.
alt to the Chargers, in
So
my
do
opinion. There you go. Protect
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Herbert.
absolutely. If you're gonna keep him, yeah. I mean, same thing,
Yeah.
I guess, with the Giants. I mean, you got Andrew Thomas and Evan Neal, but like every Giants fan on the planet wants, Evan Neal, working at McDonald's and not
Yeah.
protecting Daniel Jones, and that, I mean, that's part of the thing.
Yeah.
The Giants were the most sacked team, in the NFL since like the Eagles in like the '80s. So,
That's nuts.
I dream situation. The Giants take receiver, first, quarterback, maybe second round, and go from there. But I mean, if it came down to putting pressure on, maybe Evan Neal, or maybe moving him to a guard spot or something of that
Yeah.
sort, uh, you know, like I said, the offensive line. I feel like I've been dealing with awful offensive line play since I was like 10 years old. So
Yeah.
watching the Giants the last 15 years has just been like miserable with the offensive line. It's
Oh,
crazy
dude.
that
It's the same with the Vikings.
Eli was
It's
able
the
to pull
same.
it off twice.
Yeah.
I mean, in '07 they had a really good line, but in 2011 the Giants were ranked one of the worst teams. They only beat one team that was over 500 in the regular season and somehow won it all.
Nuts.
So
Yeah, it's tough,
I'm
man.
always intrigued by this time of year, because the expectations are high. I could see the Giants, if the front office is content, and DJ is ready to go. His plan is, they talked to him last week and they said that he's gonna be good for training camp. If if the wide receivers are off the board, I mean, absolutely. I mean, maybe six. You do see
Yeah.
another tackle, and maybe they move some guys around that are already in the front five.
For sure. And speaking on the other side too, we got defensive linemen, and obviously for me, that's the biggest need. Like on defense, like we have a ton of holes
Mm-hmm.
on defense. We just got Brian Flores, our new defensive coordinator, who's, I was
Mm-hmm.
surprised he didn't get a head coaching job last year. I'm happy we have him for a second
Same.
year, but
Mm-hmm.
he's added a bunch of his guys. He loves having like six safeties on the field. He's like a Madden player. Like he subs in safeties at every position. But
Mm-hmm.
but the biggest glaring need, we don't have a nose tackle. Like we were getting bullied up the middle. We were putting
Mm-hmm.
guys who were like converted defensive ends in the middle of our defensive line. So I think we really need a
Crazy.
big nose tackle. Like you see what the Eagles did last year with Jalen Carter coming in, and he was just getting double teamed, triple teamed, just an
Mm-hmm.
absolute difference maker in the first half of the season for them. One guy that I've seen talk about is Jonathan Brooks. So
Mm-hmm.
the big, or not Jonathan Brooks. Sorry, he's the running back. What's
Mm-hmm.
his name? Big defensive tackle. Oh, Byron Murphy the second.
I was gonna say, I was
Yeah,
reading names too
yeah, yeah.
of the.
Well, this one I shouldn't have forgotten because the Vikings already have a Byron Murphy. We have Byron Murphy Jr. at cornerback on our
Junior,
team,
yeah.
and we could add a second
Mm-hmm.
Byron Murphy. Like if we
Yeah.
miss out on the QBs, I would totally be fine with taking the best defensive tackle on the board at number 11, and then picking up potentially you know Penix or somebody at pick number 26. Honestly, the more I think about it, the more that sounds like a great situation because
Mm-hmm.
Penix could still be special, even though he's a little bit older. It might mean he's a little bit
Yep.
more step in day one ready than the other
Mm-hmm.
guys. And then our defense has holes, right? Like so, if you can add two starters in a first round, that sounds like a win to me. So,
Yep.
and then also obviously like one of the most valuable positions in the draft is edge. And I'm not gonna lie, I don't know too much about the top edge guys. Like I've heard of Latu
Yeah.
from UCLA. A lot of guys are talking about.
Yes. I was reading up on one. I can't.
I
I'm
mean,
gonna pull it up here in
Chop
1 second.
Robinson's another guy. He was one of the combine cards we got in Madden. There's a lot of great names in the draft. I was honestly reading through some of the names, and this is probably one of the most crazy, like Kool-Aid McKinstry. Have you heard about this guy named
Uh-huh.
Kool-Aid? I mean, we have Sauce
I have
Gardner in the
not.
league now. Dude, there's absolutely bonkers names coming into this draft. Chop is
Yeah.
fast. 49er, yeah. Any relation to the Murphys, Murph? I have no relation to Byron Murphy Jr. or Byron Murphy II. If I did, I'd probably be suiting up in an NFL uniform right now.
Yeah. Say you could probably play in the Canadian League, right?
Yeah, I can play CFL, but if I want to make 20K a year, and still get CTE for a fraction of the money made, yeah, honestly, CFL you gotta be crazy because most of these guys have part-time jobs. Once the season's over, they go out and work at McDonald's to pay the bills. You gotta do what you gotta
Yeah,
do.
like the top headlines I see are Vikings straight up for a QB. And it's funny too that then after it's Bills move up for a wide receiver. It's like, so you get rid of a top probably 7 receiver, and then you have to move up in the draft to take a new one.
Yeah.
It's really, really interesting. Really, really interesting.
Oh, for sure, man. Like, yeah, having to trade up. I mean, letting best player available is probably always the best strategy to go with. And I feel like the Vikings under Rick Spielman have been really guilty of like trying to trade down and like get hidden value. What I really want the new GM Kwesi, who we've had for a couple years now, I want him to just go out and be like, who here is a Pro Bowler? Like, regardless of position, it's like, just go out and pick a star. Like, I'm still salty about drafting Lewis Sign 2 years ago, who has played maybe
Mhm.
10 snaps for us. We traded down. We needed a safety. So we passed on Kyle Hamilton, traded our first round pick, and ended up
Yep.
with a guy who was a first round pick but has never played for us and probably never will.
Mhm.
Sometimes you got to just look at the tape and be like, this guy's got what it takes to be in the NFL. It's been frustrating. Like, we trying to trade down to pick up fifth to sixth and seventh round picks. It's like, dude, none of these guys are gonna make the roster. That's not
Right.
value if they don't ever make the team. You know,
Yeah.
you can fill out the
And it,
practice
and it
squad with
happened, and then you
undrafted
got a
guys.
guy, you got guys that come out of nowhere in the 5th and 6th round actually are like super valuable.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, obviously the Niners, I know 49er in the chat right now is going to talk about Brock Purdy. I mean, that's like probably one of the most rare circumstances to have the last player in the draft become a
and
franchise
yeah,
quarterback is wild.
absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's gonna be a test for all 32 teams. Everyone has wants and needs out of it. But there's gonna be winners and losers. It's just a matter of where we all fall, and just see how it goes. It's gonna be it's always chaos, right? The
Yeah.
the first hour of the draft, somebody's trading up, or someone's doing this, or someone who's gonna be. I think that's a question for the panel, is like, who's gonna be, like, what's gonna be the biggest surprise pick.
Yeah.
Is a quarterback gonna go, a quarterback that we were expecting later go first. Like, remember when Trey Lance? I remember that was like a huge thing when
Yeah.
Trey Lance got drafted. Everyone wasn't expecting him to go when he did. So,
And
are
it
we gonna
still
see a
took a
situation
package to
like that?
trade for him too. It still took like quite a bit to snag that
Yeah,
pick. So I mean,
yeah,
value is kind of like, it really is supply and demand. And now look at Trey Lance too. I mean, he's on the Cowboys somewhere. Maybe I don't even know
yeah.
if
It's
he's still on
crazy.
the roster.
I
Like,
don't know. Yeah, I was gonna say I don't know if he's still. Yeah.
he's a player who was
Yep.
worth at least what, 2 or 3 first round picks to get him. Like, it's crazy the package they gave up for a guy who never ended up panning out and probably never will at this point. And there was even rumors
Hmm.
about him potentially being a Vikings trade candidate last year once his value really plummeted. But
Yep.
yeah, man, you never know. Like, the draft is you're gambling. It's a gamble. Like, you're gambling
It's chaos.
on
Yep.
potential production that may or may not ever happen. So it's a big risk, man. And GMs, you got to have kind of like balls of steel to like go in there and put your reputation on the line every single year. There's very few front offices where like every single year they walk out with a positive draft grade.
Yeah.
Typically, I mean, but
And
for me as a Viking fan, it feels like we're consistently having bad drafts. Definitely the last 2
yep.
years, other than
Yep.
Addison, it feels like we're not adding a lot of difference makers. So I'm hoping that changes this year.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, Matt, now would be a perfect time to move into our last topic, which is biggest team need for us. Like, because obviously we might not know about every single player in this draft class, but we know what our team
Right.
needs and what we'd like to
We
see on draft
absolutely.
day. So
Yeah.
as a Giants fan, what would you like to see, from the couple days of the draft that we have coming up next week?
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a, eat your words situation. You beat Minnesota in the wild card the year before,
Yeah.
and then it's just an absolute. You give Daniel Jones all this money, like,
Mm-hmm.
we feel like it feels like such a trap, right? You feel like
Yeah.
you gave him all this money. We gotta, like, how many more chances do we give him? Like, to a
Yeah.
point where you're just eating a bunch of money.
Yeah.
Um,
He looked like Josh
so
Allen
it's
that game too. He looked like Josh Allen light. Like, he really did.
and then where's the fine line of, okay, the dude got sacked more than any quarterback in the league, like, historically. Like, it's
Yeah.
crazy how many times DJ would just snap the ball and get instantly sacked. Like, it's
Yeah.
it's it's really crazy. So, it depends, what his health, like, I think that determines everything, is whether or not they have faith in his health. I know they had, like I said, they had an interview with him last week or the week before, and he looked like, I don't he didn't look he looked like, how he was talking, his demeanor seemed
He
odd,
looked
like his
bugged out. I
I
saw
don't
his
know, like
pupils look
yeah, his eyes
dilated.
were like bugged
Yep.
out. Like, I don't know if, like, what is going on here. Like, I don't know. And you guys, if you follow me on Twitter, I'm like the the biggest DJ enthusiast. Like,
Yeah.
when Daniel Jones is great, I'm right there. Like, I'm the
When he
first
drops
person
in
to.
Madden, you're picking him up and you're using him for 2 months. Like,
I
it's
do
yeah.
do anything for that. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it does suck to kind of, like, eat your words and be like, wow, we made a mistake, and that was the wrong choice. And for some reason, we have a packed quarterback room,
Yeah.
with
Tommy
Tommy
Cutlets.
Cutlets and Drew Lock and DJ. So I I guess what's gonna probably happen, from what I want and what is probably gonna happen, are probably gonna find a way to meet in the middle. I would love a quarterback. Like I said
Yeah.
earlier, I would love Drake May. I just think it would be. I love his attitude. I just like the. He's got a fun initiative. I think the way he plays. But it's inevitable that DJ starts week 1. I think even if the Giants do draft a quarterback, I think you have to see, like, if DJ goes out there and, drops a stinker the first month of the season,
Yeah.
Yeah. Who do you throw out there? You know what I mean?
For sure.
So I think what does end up happening, though, if I have to be 100% realistic, based on who everyone takes in the first rounds, unless the Giants were to move up, they're going to probably end up with Neighbors. That's what most mock drafts are saying. It's just for me, you get another receiver, that's fine, that's great, but how are you going to utilize them? Last year you get a guy like Jalen Hyatt, dude got absolute burners, and they just don't throw to him. They don't throw to him. He had one game against Arizona where they came back down 3 scores, and kids just burning DBs over the top. Like, I just don't understand why they don't the Giants. The coaching and the offensive coaching is just you're never utilizing it the way to the potential that the rest of the guys like need them to. So if you get a receiver, I just hope you got Hyatt, you'll have maybe Neighbors, and then you got a guy like Wan'Dale Robinson, who's actually had a surprisingly good year when he's on the field. But it's a tough situation. Saquon's gone. Now you got Devin Singletary. They buffed up the offensive line, so it seems inevitable that they're going to give DJ one more ride, and maybe take a quarterback in the second round. So what we need. It feels like we need everything except D-line. I mean, you get Brian Burns and Dexter Lawrence. Dexter Lawrence has got to be, now with Aaron Donald retiring, Dexter Lawrence has got to be probably the best DT in the league, or definitely
definitely in the conversation.
In his position,
anyways.
Definitely right. So the Giants defense is I think okay. Deontay Banks, the corner they drafted last year, absolutely shut down.
Thibodeau, has Kayvon been good for you guys? Like, he had some injury issues.
I was gonna say Kayvon had like 12.5 sacks last year, 13 sacks. Like, he had a sneaky good year, and I think we're going into year 3. I think we could we hopefully, with the help of Brian Burns and some of the DBs, I think we're still hanging on to Adoree Jackson. Letting Xavier McKinney go kind of sucks, but we re-signed Isaiah Simmons, who we all know, the versatileness that he brings.
Sure.
Maybe down the road I can see them picking up another safety defensively. But other than that, because like the linebackers D line, I feel really, really, really good about it. Hopefully that
your front 7 is solid. Like, it's going to be tough.
Yeah,
you're going to generate pressure. You're going to be able to stop the run. It's just a matter of adding to the secondary for you guys. It sounds like too.
Right, and just the coaching changes. Now having dropping Wink Martindale, which a lot of Giants fans felt kind of iffy about, because Wink loves the blitz, and the Giants now have the D-line 2 blitz. Like, really. So it'll be interesting what they do there. It's got to be you'd think an offensive heavy draft for him. But if it ends up being Neighbors, and if it ends up being a trade and McCarthy or May, I'm totally on board. But the Giants need to, whatever they do, they need to stick with it. They can't, they have, if they go with a wide receiver, they need to make a game plan that's going to utilize it. And if they're gonna go with quarterback, they need to develop a plan. If DJ is just injury prone, if he's not himself, because that's what I'm worried about. He tore his ACL. He's not going to be as fast or as, because that was the biggest reason why I love Daniel. I was a big Daniel Jones fan, is because he could do it on the legs.
He's got crazy straight line speed. Like that one play where he had the huge run and then blew a tire out. Like, but he did one of the highest recorded top speeds that year in the NFL, which was shocking to me, because he doesn't look like your prototypical athletic
I was gonna say
quarterback.
he like physically reminds me just the stature of Eli.
Exactly.
So, and I was gonna say, and I watched Eli for so many years, and if Eli ran outside the pocket and went farther than 6 yards, it was like you're holding your breath.
Exactly.
So it is and that's the thing now too. It's a league where quarterbacks, you have to almost be mobile. Like, there's not too many quarterbacks that aren't at least somewhat mobile. I mean, even a guy like someone like Rodgers can still move a little bit
when he needs
to. So it's just
exactly.
Same thing with Mahomes. Mahomes is like, and I hate, just a side note, like, that Madden never respects his speed. Like, Mahomes can move. Like it is a league where the top quarterbacks can move.
And his lateral movement too, like just his ability to sidestep and keep plays alive is like really, that's one of the things that makes him the most special, I think, is that, a broken play that he can keep his head like kind of like, keep his head like nice and balanced and keep his shoulders square to the target while also evading tacklers. Like, it's he's not Lamar Jackson, but at the same time, he's definitely not the Peyton Manning sitting back there in the pocket just taking hits. Like, makes him special for sure.
Yeah, it's weird because it's like the biggest need honestly is quarterback, but you invested so much money into DJ that you're forced to just ride it out at this point. You got to give it one more go, and then after this year, you reconstruct or you figure something out. There's nobody that's taken on DJ's contract. There's nobody.
Yeah,
Not one team is
no,
going to take on
which
his
is tough,
contract.
man. Then the dead money too. You just kick that down the road. You can restructure, you can do
Exactly.
that, but it's eventually there's going to be a year where it comes where you have
Dead
to
money.
pay that money, and it's tough. The Vikings are just getting off of the dead money after this next year.
Right.
We're going to be kind of free of a lot of it, but it took an ugly year, of having not a lot of talent because we couldn't afford to pay guys. And this is the first time in free agency that we really snagged a lot of dudes, and no top end free agents this year, but nice value signings. And I'd say for the Vikings, like obviously, like I said, nose tackle is the biggest need. I could definitely see that. Hey, look at my guy Dally Gonzo. I'm only coming back from the Twitch world to be on the pod, bro. Let's rage and let him talk. Hey,
oh my
Dally,
god, I was gonna say I would love to have him on a four person panel, dude, man. That would be
that's
insane. What I need. I was gonna say I need someone in here to tell me what I'm saying is dumb. Like that's what I need in my life.
We got a lot.
Murph is gonna. I was gonna say, Murph, you'll be subjective, but you'll be pretty understanding about it. But like, I need someone that's gonna be in here and say, "Yo, your team sucks and your opinion sucks." That's what I need.
Dally will tell you all that and more. And honestly, I've been seeing more of Dally on Instagram lately, and he's got a lot of great family stuff going on, man. And congrats on all the stuff happening in your family, Dally. I really appreciate you coming through, man. But absolutely, we should fire up a podcast. We'll get me, you, Cove, Kep, and then we'll add one other legend to the pod, and I think we could have a banger. For sure.
We have some chaos. I need that. I'm here for that.
For sure. I'm hoping to fire these up, at least one podcast a week. Whatever I can do. Work schedule's been crazy, but I enjoy these too much that it's something that I really feel like I need to be doing more often. It's
healthy. It's nice to it's nice to talk about stuff that I'm usually just blabbing to myself on Twitter.
Oh, exactly.
These are Twitter conversations that I have with other Giants fans, and trust me, I'm a diehard Giants fans, but the Giants fans are the biggest morons out of any team, out of any fan base in the league. Weird. I feel like that the same way with all New York teams. Like I love my teams
crazy
more.
Microscope
they are just such the most just bipolar, just plain stupid. It's such a fun roller coaster to three diehard New York teams, because the fans are just so fucking crazy.
Oh, man, crazy. I mean, I'm seeing it now ever since the Raptors won their championship. I've seen the the young fan base that kind of came in right around the championship years. It's pretty nasty. Like Reddit, any team's Reddit thread is like the worst place to go because it's pure homerism and ridiculous stuff. But definitely discussing on a pod and having a little bit of balance makes it people will put you in place, and Kep can do that too, sir. You're right. Kep, Dally, Cove, sure I think would be an all-time great trio.
A lot of big personalities there.
For sure. And I'll just sit back. I don't have to do anything. I won't even talk.
Are you hoping for a quarterback? Who are you hoping for?
I'm hoping for QB because that's obviously more fun. I mean, even any of the guys that are going to be available to us, chances are they probably won't start at least until the season goes into a complete spiral. Maybe halfway through they'll get Darnold out of there if he sucks as much as he sucked in the past. But I was kind of relegated to thinking that maybe JJ was the most obtainable. He'll probably be the fourth one off the board. Maybe we could trade up and get him. But I also feel like we'd probably have to overpay to get a guy who maybe isn't, worthy of being in that conversation with those top three. I've also heard Drake May is the guy that they really covet, which would take probably a monster package to move up if you want to get him. We'd probably have to give up 3 firsts and maybe then some extra filler too. So. But May would be exciting on the Vikings. Daniels I haven't given too much thought to, but I'm sure I'd be happy with him if he fell in our lap. But I think again the Commanders are probably going to take him.
I think also any quarterback you bring in, I mean, you got a top 2 receiver, 3 receiver.
I mean, I do think for any including Caleb, I think any rookie quarterback, this is the best situation to be in. Our O-line's finally getting better. It's not the O-line we've had over the last 10 years. Like we do have at least solid tackles to protect the edges, and we have some serviceable guards now, which we haven't had for a long time. Defensively too, though, I feel like our defense last year, other than getting blown out a couple of odd times, when we were in tank season, I think Flores, I really trust him as a D coordinator. I want to give him whatever weapons he needs, but like anybody could tell you, we need a nose tackle. It's just with the Vikings, I think of all the missed picks. The Lewis sign instead of Kyle Hamilton, that's a huge miss. You know, and Harrison Smith maybe has one more year left in him. He keeps taking restructured salaries. He loves being on the Vikings. He still plays well, but he's
Hmm.
not what he used to be. You know, so I think we will need a safety in the next 2 years. Um, Cornerbacks, I mean, the rookie we got, Blackman last year was pretty good.
Yep.
Murphy's been okay. Like our cornerback situation is the best it's been in years, but we're still not. We could still use more QBs. Like a Caleb Evans has not been good. Andrew
Right.
Booth never plays. Like a lot of our draft picks are just failed. And then, you know, we really failed at drafting linebackers. Ivan Pace, the undrafted guy, I really like him. He can be good at middle linebacker for us. And we signed like 5 linebackers this year. So I think we have our guys now. But just nose
Yeah.
tackle is the main thing. So if we get QB and nose tackle addressed, that would be great. But I think it's more realistic we can address one or the other. I don't think we're going to be able to get both of them in this draft. At least not a top end QB and a top end nose
Right.
tackle.
Yeah, and
But
I
I'm
think
just
too, it's not like a New York or an LA, but I think you guys have such a unique like fan base and vibe. The whole skull,
yeah, man, it's
being in
cool.
a dome. Like I think where if you get a QB, I think that's gonna be somewhere where they're gonna want to thrive. Like let's say you get a quarterback and he starts week 1 and you got a home game, a loud. Even though you guys have had disappointing years in years where you've been really good, like that stadium is always pumping. I watch a lot of Vikings games just with
Yeah,
the beauty of having red
it's
zone.
gorgeous, man.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, I was gonna say you got a fun fan base. You really do. You got a fun vibe. So I think uh, I think any quarterback, you get a top receiver. You get a team that needs kind of a pick me up with a tough
Yeah,
division around them. I think that's got to be exciting to see who ends up being the guy, or if
for
that is
sure.
where they go, which
Yeah,
seems inevitable.
I'm just excited to have a season with no expectations. Like with Kirk last year, and he had a really good. You know, we got off to a slow start, but then we got to 5-4, and Kirk was on fire, and he was playing like an MVP candidate, and then the injury and the season just kind of died, and it was unexpected. You know, we expected to be a wild card team, if anything, at least compete with Kirk. Now we're breaking it down, so nobody expects to win. You know, I don't expect to win 10 games. I don't expect to win 5 games next year. So it's
Nor do
interesting. You
I.
know, I just want to have something to be optimistic for the future. I want to have somebody come in, you know, rookie QB, and like give us a reason to believe that the next 5 years we can compete with the
Mhm.
Packers and the Lions and Caleb Williams. Because if this season doesn't pan out and we don't have any positives come out of the draft, then it's going to be a long decade. You know, so yeah, I'm just hoping to have like, you know, hoping to enjoy a losing team for the first time in a long time. You know, it'll
It is.
be
It is a
it's a
weird
different
thing.
type
It
of
is a weird thing
fandom.
to enjoy a rebuild.
Yeah, it is, and it's frustrating at times. But like, you know, if I miss a game with a rebuild, it's like it's not the end of the world. Whereas if the Vikings
Hmm.
are going on a 13-win season, it's like if I miss a game, I feel like I missed an event. You know, I'm just gonna have the game on, probably have the game on more in the background until our rookie starts to come in. I'm not gonna be as locked in on every single play as I normally am. I'm not gonna have as many
Right.
crazy like do or die Twitter takes. Um, but yeah, I'm excited for the season and excited to see what's to come.
Yeah, I was gonna say we're a few days away, and then we have a long summer of speculation and
Yeah,
just waiting until August, and it will go quick, man. The summer always seems to fly by. The 17
oh
weeks when
yeah,
we have them seem to come and go, but and then
yeah,
because it's the longest like end of season to when the season starts again.
exactly.
You know what I mean? Like baseball ends and then it feels like it starts like
Yeah,
again.
exactly.
Same
162
same
game
thing with
season
the
is crazy. Yeah,
Right. Same thing with the NBA. Like the NBA goes sometimes all the way to like the end of June, towards
exactly.
that.
And
And
then
then
it's back in
these
like
guys,
October.
you're
Yeah,
talking, right. You spent July and August talking about free agency and blah, blah, blah. And the next thing you got a month or two away from the start of their season. And while you're waiting for that, the NFL starts. So it's like
for
that,
sure.
that gap, that 7 month gap. Just feels so long, and
Oh yeah,
so the
and
draft.
and
Once the draft starts, and it's draft week as of tomorrow. That's when the NFL season really starts again. And
absolutely,
regardless if the Giants win 4 games, same thing for you. 4, 7, 10 games, whatever it is. We still stay locked in and stay true to the fandom, and just hope it starts on Thursday.
absolutely, man. No, I'm excited for it. And Cove, man, it's been amazing. Like just catching up, and I feel like we should do this like way more often. So I'll be hitting your DMs on the regular. You
Of
know,
course, man.
making this pod a more regular thing again. But man, it's been awesome to talk football with you and talk about the draft, and it's getting me
Absolutely.
excited for the next few days. I guess when is it? It's 4 days away from the draft, guys. So we'll have
Yep.
to touch base and see once the draft is done. Maybe we can do a recap here and then see which teams won and which teams
Yep.
floundered. But Cove, thanks again for your time, man. Really appreciate you coming through on the pod,
Absolutely.
man. Love you, buddy.
Yeah, man. I was gonna say, man, it's always a good time. Just spending time. You know, like I always say every time we do this, it's always cool. Whether it's seeing someone, in the chat and interacting that way, it's always nice to kind of, in a sense, a face-to-face experience, man. It's always it's cool to engage. Um,
Absolutely, man. Feels like we're
with other
back. Feels
communities.
like we're back.
Yeah,
You know,
it does, man. And we both have just gotten. I know you've been dealing with some crazy scheduling.
for sure.
I've working 50, 60 hours a week, man, trying to, balance the whole thing and spend time with, family, but also try to, touch home base with, the Twitch family, because you guys have been a big part of my life, for over 4 years, almost 4 years now.
Yeah,
So
man, it's crazy.
get,
Time
getting
flies.
getting getting asked to spend some time and just talk about something we love, that's not even just what we base this whole Twitch thing around, is playing Madden and stuff like that. So it's just nice
Yeah,
to kind of have some real world conversation, even like before we started. It's always good to catch up and
absolutely,
see
man.
where you're at, man. It's always good to kind of touch base, especially for someone, we haven't exactly met in real life, but it's just
Yeah.
I've had so
One
much
day we
fun
will. One day
engaging.
we will hit
Of
up a
course, man. I
Twitch
was gonna
con and
say, you're not
we'll
far up north, man. You're
exactly.
not far too far up north. But
I've
yeah,
got a guest
absolutely, man.
bedroom with your name on it, my friend. You got a place to stay whenever you're in Toronto, or at worst the
Awesome, man.
couch. At worst, we got a couch for you.
That's couch. I was gonna say, yeah, that is totally fine. But yeah, man, absolutely. Always open. If my schedule's open, I'm here.
For sure.
I'm ready to get on with a bunch of other fellow DGens and
Yes,
see
sir.
if we can get. I was gonna say, see if we can cause some chaos. But the one-on-ones are always fun, man. I appreciate you having me on as always.